All right, so today we're talking about programming in makerspaces. A little bit of background about me. I used to work in a library, and then I left and built my own company called the Evolve Project. And what we do is we partner up with startup companies and we bring their tech into library spaces with the hopes that patrons start creating stories rather than just providing them. So today what we're covering, I'm under the assumption most of you have a makerspace. If not, I can talk more about that towards the end and how that all kind of dovetails together. So today we're talking about how to organize your space, different marketing tips and tricks to help promote your space. How do we plan for the future? What types of things and activities should we do to continue the evolution of our makerspace and continue to drive innovation? And then ideas for your space of different activities, different products that you can use to implement into your space and how to use them. So organizing your space, it's actually a giant undertaking. Once you get more involved, and if you already have quite a lot of components to your space, one of the questions that people usually ask is, how do I store it? Or how do I organize this? Because as you grow and as more people get attracted to what you're putting together, you're probably going to get new products, new ideas, technology constantly changes, and so how do we put our infrastructure together to maintain that? So there's a really, really great book from Diana Arendina that talks about how to create a makerspace. And she gives really good tips and tricks on how to organize, how to plan, and then she even touches on like how to build different activities and workshops. Some of her highlights, and the PowerPoints will be shared, so like you don't have to jot down everything you see on the slides. I talk fast too, so post a question like, can you slow down, and I'll slow down. So some highlights of her book. She first said you should talk to your staff and patrons first and talk about how they want the space to be organized. And there's a concept of letting your patrons define the space, and so letting them choose how to organize and what makes sense to them is really important. So as you expand or as you're just getting started, ask, hey, how should we store these? And put a little survey together and invite your patrons to fill it out and have conversations. People sometimes forget that makerspaces are a big component of it is the conversations that you have, not necessarily the tech. And I tell people all the time that you can have some of the coolest technology in the world. You can have holographic images and flying cars, but if there's no people there to interact and share stories and conversations, the space will fail. So in terms of organization, how should you can ask, hey, should we group similar tech together? So should we put all of our robots into a giant bin, and you pull out the giant bin and you start playing with robots? Or would you rather see, product A in a bin, product B in a bin, so on and so forth? Labels are very important. So label what it is so people know if a patron's new to what a makerspace might be, or if a patron's unfamiliar with all cool gadgets and tech, they might be a little off-put seeing all this new stuff and not sure what it's even called. So having labels helps with that. Another really cool concept Diana points out is having an in-progress space. So show either on a wall or a shelf what people have been working on, whether that's taking a photo of something or having their physical product, whatever they're building, whatever they're tinkering with, and that can be anything from Legos to little bits, and showing it off so people know that people are making things, because when other patrons see stuff being created, they're more likely to also want to participate. So in terms of storage, I'm a big fan personally of organized chaos. If you ever come into my office, you'll see probably what's on the left versus what's on the right. And that's how I think. Granted, it's not for everybody, and it's probably a safety hazard, but there's really good components of letting people have just bins of stuff, not necessarily organized, because then it makes you kind of just tinker and play, and you'll grab a box, you're not really sure what's in it, and then you're forced to kind of keep it. Very similar to if you ever see a library put a book into a brown paper bag and staple it closed, and it's called a mystery gift or mystery bag. And it gives that sense of, all right, well, here's what I have, let's figure out what it does. So here's a picture of kind of some organized chaos in a makerspace. They're making 3D printers here, and they didn't go with the Tupperware route. It's not super clean and pretty, but they use maker boxes, and it works just fine for them. They have boxes full of different pieces and parts, and people are hanging out. It's almost like a workshop and building and making. Or you can go super organized. They make laptop carts, iPad carts, and that's like the high end. You'll pay obviously a premium to have those things. But then you can even go on the low-tech end. You know, your clear plastic boxes you can get at your local hardware store, or Little Bits actually makes little trays where you can buy trays at like Menards. And if you wait for them to be on sale, I always see them for like free after rebate. And so you can shop around those and build your storage solutions that way, a little bit more affordable. In terms of, sorry about that, in terms of laptop carts or iPad carts, I've seen people actually take Pelican cases, the ones with the styrofoam inside, and cut them out and drop their iPads or laptops in that way. And then it's in a durable case so they can transport it between buildings, whereas a cart's a little bit difficult to do that. So storage, overall, when storing your items, you want to make sure it's visible. And the reason for that is you want your patrons to know what you have. If it's in colored bins or bins that aren't see-through, they're not going to know what's in the boxes, and it may pass up an opportunity to play or tinker. Maker companies that make maker tech spend a lot of money on making the design look appealing so people are gravitated to play. And if you're putting it into a box that's not clear or evident what's in it, you're just defeating the whole purpose of all that investment they put in and that you paid for. In terms of accessibility, there's a concept of you don't want to hinder someone's creativity, so allow things to be obtainable. So don't have your maker boxes behind the circulation desk, because then people might be less likely inclined to walk up and ask for something. You want them to be able to get to it on their own. And we're going to talk about security in a little bit too. And the last piece is, does it have a home? When we're talking about our maker tech and storage, when people interact with the space, so they might be moving boxes out of the way to get to something. So let's say you have a 3D printer behind a whole bunch of boxes about circuits. And every day people move these boxes about circuits out of the way to get to the 3D printer. So chances are you should probably have your 3D printer front and center because that's what people want. And so let them define the space. I used to work at a university, and this was a rough concept to come up or get to. We organized the library space to be more collaborative with like round tables and stuff, but we had it scattered across the library floor in the university. And every day this one group of students would take all these tables from different corners of the room and put them together and have like a huge work session working on a project. And every night the staff would then put the tables back to where they were, to their original corners of the library space. They did this for about a month until somebody asked, hey, why are you guys doing this? And they're like, oh, we have a really big project we're working on, and we have to get it done by the end of the term, and we're here every day, and we just move these tables together. I hope that's okay. And then the staff was like, well, why don't we just let you continue doing that, and we'll leave it alone so you don't have to spend 30, 40 minutes every time you're here re-putting the space back together to what you need. And so then after we started doing that, the word got out that the library was friendlier, and letting people define the space was huge, because then people felt like the space was part of them and part of theirs, and they had a say-so in how everything was at. Some of us don't have the luxury of having giant spaces or a dedicated room, and so there's alternatives. Get a maker table. Or a table, just a basic table, and nominate a different table each week, or the same table each week, to have a different activity out. So if we can't have our storage out on display, then we can encourage our patrons to visit us every week, therefore increasing our numbers of patrons coming into the library, and say, hey, every week we're going to put something different on this table, and it's going to be a surprise. This local, and I like sharing stories a lot, hope that's cool. This local bar I go to, they do something similar with their soup of the day. They have no schedule for what soup is going to be for the day, and they just have, and their soups are really good. And it gets people to come more frequently because they want to know if their favorite soup is going to be on the menu. Or even people apparently, according to the waitress, people drive by the bar and then stop in really quick to ask what kind of soup you're having. And this causes people to continually come into the space on a regular basis to find out what's going on, what's changed, etc. So doing this maker table and having a different event front and center consistently can help drive traffic. Or do like a rotating collection as an alternative. So share with your fellow libraries or branches and share kits and stuff. There's a group called Make It at Your Library that's doing something like that as well, where you can share a kit and you borrow it for a short period of time, and then you pass it along. And then this will help overcome your space restrictions, because now we're avoiding storage because there's a different library using it, and if every library pitches in, then you have something really special. So now let's talk about our favorite, security. I challenge people, is it really needed? So some people want to know if they should lock their tablets down so you can't steal it, or their laptop security locks. There were studies done that measured that, and it turns out it wasn't really that much in terms of theft. Most of the things that are missing from the library are actually items that just aren't returned or misshelved. And so putting that concept together might be scary, because we're like, well, we spent a lot of money on these laptops. But at the end of the day, if you're locking it down or securing it, you might deter someone, especially younger kids. So if you think about it, when you take your kids to like a Best Buy and they see all those fancy laptops and tablets out and about, all locked down, and the child wants to go play, chances are you say, no, because I'm not going to go buy you a new laptop if you break it. And so they have this concept of, you know what, if it's locked down, I probably can't touch it, and I can't play, and I can't experiment and learn. And so I encourage you to kind of be more open with your maker tech. And we can definitely discuss this. I like discussing this kind of stuff. So be more open. Let people play and interact. The worst thing that can happen is, yes, someone steals it, but it's not the end of the day. If we were afraid of people stealing stuff, we wouldn't even have books. We wouldn't have public computers. And so just keep that in mind. It's more important to let people make and create than it is worrying about someone stealing like an iPad or something. What about instructions? So there's pros and cons with having instructions and not having instructions. Me personally, I'm a big fan of not having instructions because that makes people learn and interact and struggle on a whole new level. So they say if you give someone a set of instructions, they're going to read it. So step A, step B, step C, follow it, complete the project, and call it good. And that's not really making, that's just following a recipe or following steps. You want people to be challenged and try to figure it out themselves. And so in terms of programming, I had two different types of teachers when I was in college. One teacher would give us just the answer key to all the programming questions, and the other teacher would give very little direction, but if you had a well-defined question, he would answer it, and that was his rule. And so the class that I had where the teacher just gave us the answers, or here's the instructions on how to build the game, and me included would sit down and just type it out, follow the steps, and I didn't learn anything from that class. I can't tell you anything about game development. But the teacher that then made me, if I had a question or I struggled on something, and basically write out like a mini report of why I needed help and assistance, that class I know everything from. I'm very proficient in that language. And so, because I had to struggle the whole time, and yes, it's rough, and I failed multiple times, but at the end of the day, it made me smarter. And they say that innovation is born from failure. If you talk about Post-it notes, for instance, that was a failed idea that then became Post-it notes. There's a startup company called 3Doodler. It's a 3D pen that allows you to draw in 3D. It came from a failed 3D printer. A 3D printer failed, and they were like, well, wouldn't that be better if we took a pen and we filled in the spot that the printer failed in printing? And so there's all these concepts of removing your structure and organization, in a sense, and building the gaps yourself. And so help your patrons out. So let them play, let them interact. If they have a question, answer it for them, and help them succeed. And then at the same time, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be the know-it-all behind a specific tech or a specific gadget to have it. Let's say you know nothing about electricity or circuits and how things turn on and off. It doesn't mean you can't have circuit kits in your library because you're not the expert. No, no, it's perfect, because then you can learn with the patrons and everyone benefits. I don't know if that makes sense, but the idea is let people invent new ideas and come to their own conclusions, and that will foster new ideas and innovation. And the other hot topic is rules. So rules are great because they can offer a sense of security, peace, and order. And those are things that we always like. But at the same time, rules can be detractors. And to kind of avoid that, don't use the word no. So if you say no yelling or shouting in the library, it's a detractor because you're telling somebody what they can't do. And they're going to only focus on what they can't do. So instead, you can say, hey, please use calm voices in the library. So now you kind of shifted the focus off the word no and focusing on what you actually want them to do. And personally, I'm more of a, there was a makerspace in a library I saw that had a poster that said makerspace rules, and just had 3 rules: work with purpose, clean up, and be respectful. And there's a few other libraries that kind of mimic that, where, you know what, this is supposed to be a fun place for us to interact and learn. In terms of rule signage, use colors and use them carefully. Red is obviously like a uh-oh, but it'll draw your attention. And so if you have all these red signs everywhere, they're going to be focused more on the no's or the what they can and can't do than on the cool stuff in your space. So there's a balance you kind of have to discover on what's the right amount of signage, what's the right amount of color, and where do we write about it. And the last piece is my favorite, and we can probably all agree. We've all been to a place that has a really weird rule because of like one incident. And so there was a restaurant I went to, and it had like a really weird rule about, because they let dogs come in, but they had like a rule about no dogs with clothes on or something. And I had no clue like why, but I guess somebody spilled something all over the dog's clothes and they got mad or something. I have no clue, to be honest. But don't write a rule about a single incident, because you know what, it happened once and it might not happen again, and there's no need to call it out because you're just adding to the do's and don'ts. There's another thing that I heard once. It was, so Hopscotch is an app that teaches you how to program. In the app, you're allowed to add emojis to your character, so you can build games basically. And you don't have to have a programming background. You don't have to be a master at computer use. You can be an everyday iPad user, and you can make a fully functioning game. You can build Frogger out of this app within about 30 minutes, which is pretty cool. But when children were using it, they were publishing their games and sharing with the world, and that's part of the features of the app. There was a parent that wasn't very happy about seeing all these games with the poop emoji, and they wanted all those games to be removed and deleted and never to be seen again. And so so in their building they have a sign that says poop is okay, because as they were talking about it and trying to figure out what should we do, should we remove all of these games that kids invented and programmed because they're using something that's, you know, poop. And so we came to the conclusion that it's fine, because at the end of the day, those kids were programming. They were having fun and they were interacting. So if they were expressing their humor, should we really discredit their game that they made? And the answer became no, because poop is fine. They're using it as an expression. So when you're looking at your space and seeing how people interact, kind of keep that in the back of your mind that, you know what, if they're using, for instance, the poop emoji, it's not the end of the day, because they're still making something, they're still creating, and really it's not that offensive. And so just something to think about. The link for the write-up about it is at the bottom. The other one is, so that's rules, all the boring stuff for putting your space together. Now let's talk about marketing. So marketing our space is a challenge, or it's really relatively easy. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. But we want to continue to market. Even if everyone knows who we are, we still have to market our new stuff. So using social media is one of the fastest ways to market what we do and how we do it. And that can be over a variety of different mediums. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, even Yelp reviews, or Snapchat. There's a library that actually does a Snapchat story on a continual basis, which is really cool because a lot of people use Snapchat, especially a lot of our teen users or young adult users or even our college and high school users. And what they'll do is they will Snapchat different people playing with the Makerspace and sharing it on the story. And then they even do games randomly, like guess what they're building, and whoever guesses first wins. And so then people reply, and they have conversations through a digital medium where they don't have to be, physically at the library, but we're still bringing people together. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to accomplish. So some tips and tricks. And thank you. I work really hard on my memes. In terms of tips and tricks, we have Facebook and Twitter are probably our two power users. They say Facebook users are engaging, meaning that when people post on Facebook, they want to have stories and share conversations because you can basically write like giant books in your posts. And so when you're communicating to users on Facebook, you want to share fun activities that people are doing. And you want people to have a conversation about it. So take a picture of someone printing something out on the 3D printer and say, hey, so-and-so, tag them if you can, is building this really cool item on our 3D printer. And then have them share the story. Either have them comment on it, like this is what I'm building, and this is why it's important. This is the problem I'm solving, because sometimes you can use a makerspace to solve a problem. And so use that as a storytelling mechanism and let people come together, because libraries are about stories, right? So let people come together and share those activities and share that passion and excitement that's going on. The other one is offer challenges. So post a challenge on your Facebook page or to your Facebook group saying, hey, this week we want to try to build the longest circuit ever created using our little bit kits. Would you like to participate? Or what are your ideas to help us reach this goal? And so these ideas, we kind of want like open-ended questions where it forces people to talk. And explain and build, and then you drive traffic because they're going to share these posts to their other friends on Facebook. When they comment, all their friends will see that they're commenting to your library space, whether that's a school or a public library, it doesn't really matter. And then you want to get people liking things, commenting on it, sharing it, because as they do that, as they're communicating with you, you're expanding your reach. In terms of like networking, I love networking. It's probably the most important thing I do. Networking is about expanding your circle of influence. So they say the quote is like you only have one mom. And the idea is that you want to know who your friends know, and then you want to know who your friends' friends know. And the idea is to kind of branch out and get to a more of a global level by getting constantly referred and communicating with other people. And Facebook and Twitter are fantastic tools to do that. In terms of Twitter, Twitter users are influencers. So if Facebook users are engaging, Twitter users like to be influencers. And so you would want to promote a milestone on Twitter. So take a picture and say, look at what so-and-so accomplished. And then people will retweet it or share it. Or if somebody made some really great invention and you want to share it to the masses, use Twitter because then people will kind of push that forward. And then you encourage all of your users, and that goes the same for Facebook too, but to share what they're doing in the space. Because a makerspace is supposed to be about people coming together with similar passions and goals and objectives and making things and learning from each other. And so by asking our patrons to do the marketing work for us, it's a win-win because they're going to help us reach new people and also kind of put us on the map differently. I want to see libraries be more like kitchens instead of grocery stores. And so people are coming in and making and creating, and so using social media to kind of help with the outreach and having your patrons do the outreach is one way to accomplish that. And so with social media, you do have to be active. It's not something that you can kind of set up once and let people comment and you hope that it takes care of itself, because chances are it won't. And so you will spend a lot of time on social media because people will stop interacting with you or reaching out to you if they see that you're not responsive enough. People want replies, they say, within 3 hours usually when they email, tweet, or Facebook chat or whatnot. And so that doesn't give us a lot of leeway in terms of delivering answers or sharing stories and replying to conversations. And so you might have to dedicate some time every day to just quickly check, see what's going on, interact with new people, do new reach outs, and build that way. So there's also an opportunity using social media to allow people to self-promote. So if your Makerspace has the ability to record, and that could be videos, music, etc., add that to your collection. And so push these things out, or even build a website. You can build things in Drupal that work really well from a file content strategy, and let people upload these files, whether they be videos, music, etc., and let people see it all over the world. And then we'll allow people to then share those creations. And it's really inexpensive to do, and it works incredibly well. The other one is hosting a movie night. Share the creations that people make, or a music night, or whatever it may be. Play music in a specific part of the library that shows stuff that people created. Because then it gives those individuals that made it a sense of publication. They're going to feel excited that, you know, my library is sharing something I created. And they're going to tell their friends and family to check it out. And now we're driving more traffic to our Makerspace. The other one is, in terms of programming, let people do a robot night or do a game night and film it, put it on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, etc., and show what everyone's making. And so if people make a whole bunch of different robots, have a program then where everyone comes in with their built robots or explain it to an audience, almost like a science fair. In terms of engineering products or projects, like building circuits or even building robots, build displays for it. Let people showcase the work, take pictures, post it online, put albums together or whatnot, to show what people make. Because again, this whole concept of a makerspace, it hangs on having people interact and engage. Or if it's art or craft orientated, so people are making art, sculptures, paintings, whatever it may be, put it on display. Allow people to borrow it or check it out. Because again, they're going to share it to their friends and family, all the awesome stuff that the library is doing for them, and it's going to drive more traffic to our library space. And another piece that we sometimes forget about is our local businesses. Chances are people within your community, or even nearby, or within the state, advertise what you guys do. Say, hey, we got 3D printers. Come in and prototype stuff. Or if you need to build marketing materials, we have computers to do that. Places that tinker with stuff. There's the idea of tinkering is a brainstorming exercise. So if you ever go to there's thing called like a think tank, where a whole bunch of people come together and they come up with new ideas in a short amount of time, or build upon an existing idea. They'll actually have puzzles on the table, whether that be Rubik's Cubes or those wooden block puzzles. And the idea is, or the concept behind it, is by tinkering, by playing, and by interacting with something or fidgeting, it actually helps you brainstorm better. It unlocks something within your brain, some type of chemical, that allows you to think differently. And that's one way to do that, is having these puzzles, having these activities. There's even opportunities for Legos, having a bin of Legos out and letting people come together and just put stuff together with Legos and talk. And it's a really great opportunity. There's another side of the fence in terms of local businesses, is having your experts come out. So chances are there's people in our community that have a company that builds websites or builds robots or cooks, chefs, etc. Have those local businesses be the educators for your space. So host, and they'll volunteer and do it. This is the best part. People that are passionate about their business will probably come out and chat and have conversations. And so if you have somebody that has a 3D printing company or has a bunch of 3D printers, say, hey, would you mind coming to our library space and talking about 3D printing? And 9 out of 10 times they're going to say yes, and they're not going to even ask for money. And so if you want to save some bucks on programming ideas, reach out to your local businesses, and I assure you, you're going to get way too many local businesses coming back and saying, we would love to do this, that you'll have to schedule it out for like next year. And give them the option to promote the program. So let them reach out and say, hey, let the businesses reach out for you and say, hey, we're going to reach out to all of our customers and clients saying, we're going to be doing this activity in our library. Would you like to participate? And so now we're going to drive traffic of people that might not know what the library does into our space. If you have no clue where to start, just pop open that phone book. They still make those actually, and flip through and go, hey, cool, here's an opportunity. Let's reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to do something. Somebody asked, robots, art, programming, etc. is happening throughout the high school. How do I encourage or market to happen in the library? So I'm assuming you mean like this type of stuff is happening in different classes. And so as a school librarian, you have best ability over everybody else to kind of cultivate all this information. Librarians are very good at bringing things together. So I'd reach out to either like the department chairs or or even the principal and saying, hey, I want to take everyone's outputs of these robots, art, programming games, and put it into the library space and do like a rotating display. So do Robot Month, where you then reach out to all the classes that are doing robots, and unless all these projects are finished at the same time, it might be difficult, but or even work with the students directly and saying, hey, bring in your robot you created in February for Robot Month so we can showcase it in the library and have the robots on top of shelves or in empty spots on our shelves, or even just randomly on tables with little signs of who made it and what it does. The cheaper alternative or a non-space limiting alternative is just posting it online, putting a Facebook group together, having your students join it, and seeing photos of what's created and whatnot. And that's one way to help do that. And then at the same time, invite those classes to come into the library and go reach out. I'm not sure how well that works within a high school. I've done presentations in high schools before without a problem. And so reach out to like local businesses and saying, hey, and you run with it. So like you leverage your connections and your power, if you will, and say, hey, teacher that's teaching robots or art, I'm going to have an expert from our community come in and do a presentation. Would you mind having your class come and join it? And then that's another way to kind of funnel more activity to your library. Does that make sense? If I didn't answer the question completely, go ahead and let me know and we can reiterate. Many schools have one librarian. Who should I connect to with to support the library while engaging? That's a really good question. Have one of your like library users, like one of your students. So at least when I was in high school, there was like interns almost, unpaid interns that volunteered within the library space. Have them kind of do reaching out, and that'll obviously help them learn like their business skills and entrepreneurialism. So those are kind of the people that you want to highlight. Have a high school junior or senior do it and say, hey, I want you to reach out to these people. We'll reach out to these other classes and put something together. We can talk more offline too. I'll have my contact info at the end, and I'll help you put this whole thing together. So in terms of local business experts, the other great thing too that I've seen happen in some libraries is there's companies that will actually start using the library to accomplish their business objectives, which then gives you an opportunity to ask them to help you for funding, which is kind of cool. So planning your space. It takes a lot of work. It's a constant evolution. You're constantly changing. You're constantly adding things, and so there takes a considerable amount of effort to make things happen. But you can manage it. The first is planning for staff, and again, if you only have one staff member, it might be difficult to have them juggle and balance. So we would have to kind of leverage, an intern or an assistant or a volunteer to help make this happen. But in terms of staff involvement, rehab promoters and you're going to always have people that promote the activity and challenge the activity, which is just the way the world works. And so you want to encourage the people that are challenging these ideas, or challenging making and innovating, and say, hey, well, what are you passionate about? And try to connect with them on that level to then let them come up with their own making idea and then get their buy-in that way. In terms of staff training, and I'm in IT, so I can make this joke, but they say that IT people, technical people, don't have a lot of empathy. It's very one track. Here's your problem. Here's your answer. Have a great day. And so teaching those technical people more about empathy and understanding of where people are coming from and explaining things in a different way is one way to help make that happen. There's a product from 21 Toys called the Empathy Toy, which actually teaches you about empathy. It's a game where it's a wooden block game where you're blindfolded and you have to build puzzles completely blindfolded and explain to somebody else how to build that puzzle piece who's also blindfolded, and then using just words to communicate. It's kind of cool. In terms of non-technical people, you're going to have to teach them technical stuff. And so put together an event or a little sit down and let them play and tinker, very similar to how you would have your patrons do it. And so let them play, tinker, ask questions, provide answers. A lot of the companies that actually you might be buying stuff from will actually help you with that. All you have to do is ask and say, hey, we bought these things. We have no clue how to use it. Could you put something together so we can learn? And chances are they either have something developed already, or they'll do a WebEx with you and explain it and get you all situated. Just have to ask. In terms of planning for our future, work with the school curriculum. If you're a public library, reach out to the school and ask if you can be invited in, and find out what their curriculum paths are like. What are the projects that are going to be due soon? Why are they going to be due? Or what are they? And start building your makerspace to match what their objectives are. Because then both of you can work together on driving traffic to your library. So if I was a teacher teaching about, and this is a non-makerspace example, but if I was a teacher talking about history, I would then say, hey, go to your local library. They actually have a dedicated history space right now where you can go out and check out the books for history. So applying that to our makerspace is if I'm teaching about, even if I am teaching about history, some of the maker tech that's out there actually has curriculum designed to align with history. So there's like an activity that involves some sort of history component, and there's a story that goes with it, and you learn about history while you're tinkering with a tech piece. It's kind of cool. Excuse me. And also start small. You don't have to buy a whole bunch of stuff in order to have a makerspace. You can get one item and call it a demo item and call it good. So get a single kit and leave it out on the table and let people play with it and interact with it. You don't have to go bananas and buy everything that's existing. And then the other piece is surveying our users. What worked, what didn't. If something isn't working, remove it. There's no point in beating the dead horses, if it will. So remove stuff that people don't like to replace with stuff people do like. And then the other piece is obvious, budget appropriately. Some people actually will take money out of the book budget or money out of a different budget to help fund new tech products, because you can rationalize how many uses a product will get and compare it to how many uses a book can get. So there's a gentleman that actually bought a HoloLens for his library, and within the first month, the per use cost, it's a $3,000 item, the per use cost became $3, because he had 1,000 people within a month come into his library to play with just the HoloLens. And so then he can go, well, this is great, because now if I run this for a second month, the cost per item goes down, and it continues to drop dramatically because it's a really hot item that's not readily available in the marketplace. Or if you aren't able to do taking from other funds, fundraise. Reach out to your local community and ask if they'd be willing to help out. There's a library that did a campaign called 50 for 50, where they reached out to 50 different local businesses and asked for funds to raise $2,500. But getting survey data And finding out what does and doesn't work is a daunting task. Because as you know, most people don't fill out their surveys. So to help reach those goals, here's some survey tips in at least planning for your makerspace and what to do next. Keep them short and sweet. You want to keep them less than 5 minutes. You want to have most of your questions should be closed-ended. You want a clear and direct answer so you can run reports off of it. If you use open-ended questions, it usually involves feelings, and it'll be less focused on facts and more about opinions. And you don't want opinions when you're trying to put together a project plan. You want hardcore facts. And then there's another piece about evaluating loyalty and satisfaction. And so they say that an average happy person, somebody that enjoyed a service or enjoyed an activity, they're only going to tell 1 or 2 people how happy they were about it. However, if someone didn't like it, they will typically tell 3 to 6 people how unhappy they are. So for every 1 unhappy person, you're going to need 2 to 3 happy people to make up the loss. That makes sense. And then loyal users, the ones that are happy, will return and encourage more people to come. And this is called NPS scoring. So NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. I'm going to briefly touch on this just to add some context. So people that rank you on a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, anyone that gives you a 0 to 6 is called a detractor. Anyone that gives you a 7 or 8 is a passive, and anyone that gives you a 9 or 10 is called a promoter. So promoters, those are the ones that are going to share how great it is, how much fun they had, and continue to love your services, keep returning, keep adding ideas. Those are the people that you want to hold on to and value. Passives, they're the ones that can flip any moment. They can become a detractor or they can become a promoter. So these are people you really need to focus on and find out, hey, what's holding them back to committing to being a promoter. And so if they give you a survey that, it was okay, find out how you can make it better. And then detractors, they're the ones that didn't like it. And usually they have something to add to why they didn't like it. If not, reach out. So, hey, I saw that you didn't like our program. What happened? What can we do differently next time to kind of win you back? And having these conversations is important. Just by putting a survey in place doesn't solve problems. It just gives you data. But if you don't act on your data, you can't fix anything. So reach out to people that are detracting or that scored you a 0 to 6. So then to calculate your NPS score, you basically take the percentage of customers who were promoters, and you subtract them from the people that are detractors, and obviously you ignore passives in the percentages, but you use it to total up the total amount of surveys. So here's the math example. If you don't like math, there's a website that can actually calculate your survey results for you. But the reason why NPS is important is it's a standard. So then you can measure your brand or an activity or whatever it may be with everybody else, because everyone that uses NPS or Net Promoter Score is counting it the exact same way on the exact same scale based on the exact same question, which is cued off of would you tell somebody about our services? And so then you can compare. If you go, hey, I really like how Apple runs their customer service. They make me feel special every time. So when you do your surveys, you want to make sure you beat Apple. And when you calculate it, you can then compare it to what Apple says people rate them. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a benchmark idea. So how to survey and ask our crowd. It's important to use effective surveys. And this will help drive new ideas to our business, to our library, whatever it may be. And also helps us identify weaknesses and highlight new opportunities. But we know that survey rates are poor, and we constantly have to refine how we reach out. If you give too many surveys, people get annoyed and they just start ignoring you altogether. If you don't send reminders, people forget. So there's a balance that you have to decide how frequently are you going to ask for surveys. There's 4 ways to get surveys, and that's either through a website or through an email, through telephone, through paper, like pen and paper, right on the desk, or in person. Simply by saying, hey, there's going to be a survey ahead of time, you're going to get better results. My favorite way to get surveys is through in person, And so there's a library in New York that like tricks you into filling out a survey without you knowing, and they're having conversations, just general conversations, and they'll slip in, hey, would you recommend our library to anybody? Oh yeah, I would, and they, check a box. And so they on the fly ask random questions, or that seem random, but they're gathering data about what people like about programs, what was their favorite idea, just through casual conversations. The other thing about surveys is being unique. If you're doing emails, no one likes a generic email invite that says, dear library user. So do some research on funny ways to answer surveys. This one from Company was humorous because they joked that too many people get surveys, so would you like to fill ours out, type of thing. So now let's talk about more programming ideas. Me personally, my favorite programming idea is just open play, meaning have stuff out, let people navigate, walk through it, play with it on their own, decide if they like it or not, continue to the next table, next activity, whatever it may be. The idea of being able to sit down and do whatever has a lot of value to it. But at the same time, having structured play is also important. So in terms of robotics and programming, here's some activities that you can do within your space. Overall, there's different types of robots and coding. There's tactile programming, which is programming without the use of computer. So you're using either, and I'm going to show pictures, you're going to use tiles to show a series or push buttons on a robot to program it. If you're using your computer to code, there's two different ways to do it. There's goal-oriented, so you set the challenge as, let's make the robot blink its eyes. Or you do design-oriented, so let's have the robot follow through a story or follow through a maze or get from point A to point B and how to do that. That's more design-oriented, so we have to think differently on how to set up our framework or how to set up our robot. In terms of coding a robot or building a robot, the three main activities are building an obstacle course, so building a course that lets people navigate through it, avoiding obstacles, going up and over bridges, whatever it may be. The other one is doing races, so letting people see how fast they can get their robot through a course that they built. Or everyone's personal favorite, BattleBots, which is back on TV. And so building a robot and having it battle another robot. So I'm going to talk about some of the most commonly used maker tech and activities you can go. I'm going to zip through these just so we can have more conversation, more time at the end to have conversations. So the sphere ball, it's a robotic ball that you can control with your smartphone. You can guide it through the library, let people follow. You can play tag with, if you have multiple balls, it'll actually count collisions and you can play tag. You can do painting activities. So have you ever done the marble activity where you drop a marble into a box or with paint on it and you move the box around and then your marble paints? Instead of moving the box around, you drive the sphere around. You can actually program the balls to dance on their own or move on their own, and you can do choreographed art to music by programming the balls to move, or building obstacle courses and having the balls navigate through it. Dash and Dot are two different robots that allows you to do similar activities. So you can build mazes. There's one of the apps is called Wonder Play, where you will do different activities. So hey, make the robot say hello. Make the robot blink when you say hello. And so it walks you through various activities and processes that you can do independently. If you're doing it as a group, what I've seen libraries do is you can actually program the robots to use your own voice and do your own communications. And so a group of kids once were playing with Dash, the one on wheels, and programmed the whole thing to interact with each other differently, which was pretty cool. And they did it all on their own without instruction. They were playing with the game and learning what it can do and implementing their own ideas. We've probably seen Legos before. Lego WeDo is a easier robot. It's drag and drop programming. But if you build a robot, you can then share a story. So you can film someone talking about their robot and what it does and why it's important. Lego also does a robotics competition as well that you can participate in. Lego Mindstorm is a little bit more advanced, but you can automate a lot of functions. At the same time, The robot competitions are a lot bigger, they're a lot more fancier, and they're really competitive. There's a library that's also in New York that put together their own Lego team, Lego Robotics team, and they went to, I believe it was state, as a library. How cool is that? And then they were sharing all their successes and stories with their friends about going to a library and building a Lego robot. Next is a competitor where they make their own type of Lego. But my favorite thing about Next is you can actually 3D print any of their pieces that if you lost or missed, and it's 100% free to print. They have all the renderings already uploaded, and you print from your printer, and you're good to go. And they also do a robotics competition. Ozobot are adorable little robots that will trace lines that you draw, and depending on the patterns you use or the colors you use, the robot will react differently. So the most basic contest or basic activity is drawing mazes. So getting butcher paper, drawing mazes, and letting the robot follow it. The other one is offer challenges. So, hey, let's see how many tricks you can do in a given amount of time with your robot, and they would draw it out and see how many tricks they can do. And the other one is storytelling. So the idea of using robots to tell stories is kind of a new idea that a lot of people are implementing, where you give the character, you give the robot a persona, even give it a name and say, you know, Billy the robot wants to navigate, you know, to his neighbor's house. But there's, you know, and you can put all these scenarios in and how the robot needs to avoid it. And as you tell the story, they code by drawing the robot going through it. MEOWDIA, it's a Lego-compatible robot where you can mount Legos to it and drive it around. So this would be your whole BattleBots thing. So building a robot with Legos and building a little arena and letting them crash into each other and saying, you know, whose robot can flip over whose or whatnot. Finch is a robot that you can plug in and program through a variant of Scratch through drag and drop icons. The idea with Finch is you can build an obstacle course, for instance, and then have everyone see if they can program the robot to move on its own through the course, or how many tries does it take for you to navigate from point A to point B. Cubelets is another robot. So by putting cubes together, you can make robots essentially, and each block has its own component, whether that's making it move, making it make a sound, making it spin around, etc. And so people will have actually individual contests in their own head. How big of a robot can I make with this? And then how do I control it and how do I drive it? They make another product, Cublet. Their parent company is Modular Robotics. So they make another product called Moss that you can remotely control via Bluetooth and drive it around and interact. Wink is a brand new tech product that's out. It's based on Arduino, so it's C coding. It's an Arduino board with a whole bunch of really different functions on it, such as buzzers, motors that make it move, lights that blink. There's a light sensor and a line sensor. And the way it's organized, it's activity-based learning. So chapter 1 is like learning how to make the LEDs blink. Chapter 2 is making it move. Chapter 3 is making it move, and when it runs into something, have the eyes blink. And so it's a stage approach to learning. But the idea is that after you learn how to program your robot, you can set it free and let it navigate your room and avoid obstacles or change color when it sees light or whatnot. Little Robot Friends is a newer piece of tech too, where the idea is they wanted to build a social robot. So people can build their own codes for the robots, plug them in, and then talk to each other. So wirelessly. So like you can tickle the robot and it'll react, the eyes will blink and it'll make a noise. And then it can also send that data to its robot friend, letting him know that it's happy or it's being tickled. But then it teaches you more about emotions and interactions. Oops. The Hummingbird Kit. This is an activity that you would probably spend like a whole hour or two on, sitting down and using craft materials, building a robot out of a kit that has different motors, sensors, lights, etc., and programming it on Scratch. So this is something that a group of people can do with one item and sit down and all play and interact. Cubetto is a robot that has a personality. And the reason why I say that, it comes with a book, and Cubeto has an adventure to have. And there's a map that the robot then travels on. And the idea is you read the book, Cubeto has to go to the grocery store, if you will, and by using those little colored tactiles, which is that red, square, green, yellow, and blue on the left, the robot will move. And it teaches you about programming without having a computer. And you're simply putting tiles together that have different functions and making the robot character move from point A to point B. Very similar robot is the blue bot and the B bot, which the blue bot is the character on the right down there. The blue B bot is just it in a yellow case without Bluetooth. But the idea of the B bot is very similar to Cubeto, or blue bot is very similar to Cubeto, where you have tactiles, those little squares, and you put them together in a series and hit go, and the robot moves. And so this helps you learn about sequencing, and this helps you learn about putting things in an order to have some and having it react. And so again, you can build a course and say, all right, how many steps forward does the robot need in order to before it can turn left on your maze? And then we talked about this earlier with Hopscotch. It'll teach you how to program, and you build cute, adorable games by dragging and dropping, very similar to Scratch, dragging and dropping commands and building characters and what happens when these characters interact. So switching gears, so we talked about robots. If you want to teach circuits and engineering, there's a whole suite of really awesome products out there that help teach that. So programming ideas for circuits. From a simple standpoint, it's very challenge-based or process-driven. So how do I turn on a light switch? What do I need to make a light switch? You need power, an on and off, and a bulb. And you put these together and you make it. The other one is telling a story. So you can say, hey, Barbara goes into the store and she needs to turn on a light. Make her a light so she can turn it on. So then you built your circuit and you turn on the light. Or I've seen somebody actually make a map of a town and using different circuit kits to light things up. So that's your simple stuff. From a complex, you can do a design challenge. So very similar to building a map, but you can do, hey, let's make our library with a 3D cardboard or a 3D printer, and let's have it light up in different sections. And you basically build art almost, build electrical art. And then in terms of the circuits or programming, so we can use this as a transition period too. So if we learn about circuits and how those circuits interact and how power works, then we can move that into an interactive phase with programming it to do stuff. So Little Bits is probably the most common. Everyone probably has already heard of Little Bits, but it's an open source library of all these little modules that come and snap together. And this is a really great way to get people to come together and interact and play and share stories. And they have a whole suite of activities you can download based on curriculum development or based on passions and whatnot. Light Up is another great product that you can actually take pictures of your circuit and they'll tell you through an AR program if you made your circuit right or wrong and how to fix it. It's more designed for self-paced learning. So you take the kit, you take the iPad, and you go to town making circuits, and it walks you through everything. Makey Makey allows you to take your game you developed and use a controller to interact. And so very simple, very, very fun. And what some people have done is they've done like Tetris in their library space, where the arrow directional keys are on different sides of the wall, and people have to link arms in order to make it move. So that's circuits and electricity. In terms of 3D printing, the idea of a 3D printer is based on like doing prototyping and based on coming up with new ideas or solving a problem. So from a very basic standpoint, you basically build a design or edit an existing one and see what happens when you print. As you get more advanced, you can go, hey, let's design our own 3D printer. And there's all sorts of really great instructions on websites that tell you, here, print this out, you put these two pieces together, then get this hardware component to make it move. Or people have built a drone. So let's make something fly using our 3D printer. There was a library in Florida that was actually building a drone that when it flew, it would also 3D print. And so there's this constant evolution of how far can we take our idea, or even building robots. The other one is solving issues with 3D printing. Have the community do a community project. Everyone has to print a model of the town, and so now you have a 3D replica of your community. Other libraries are printing prosthetics, printing out arms and so forth from their library space. One really cool product is the 3Doodler. That lets you draw in 3D, and it allows people with that artistic flair to design their own art just simply by drawing and 3D printing at the same time. Now switching gears some more, now with the 3D Doodler, then you would then showcase it. So a new trend is this idea of augmented reality or virtual reality and how that all kind of dovetails and why it's important. So at the core, the idea of virtual reality or augmented reality is allowing us to interact in a space that we're not currently in, whether that's a digital space, or it's always a digital space, but whether that space is sci-fi-ish or being transported to a music festival that I couldn't attend, that somebody recorded everything in 3D, and then I can walk around and interact. People have rebuilt lost cities graphically on a computer, or relived a moment by using a 3D camera. And we're moving into a direction of where this virtual and augmented reality is becoming more common. They're even building video games. PlayStation, for instance, is building games that allow you to play virtually. And so there's HTC Vive, which is in the bottom left, or the Oculus Rift. Sorry, the Oculus Rift is the bottom left. And then on the top right is a HoloLens. And so putting these products together and figuring out what their capabilities are is very open right now because we haven't defined what it can and cannot do. Right now, the sky's the limit of what it can do. So a lot of people are jumping the bandwagon or jumping on board to come up with activities they can do with these products and what their applications are and what the impact is to our world. So I'll get some slides, I think. So some key objectives. I'm going to show some examples of virtual reality in a little bit. Some key objectives is we want to have a fun environment. We want to organize our space to make it interactive, engaging, exciting, etc. Ways to do that is by pulling survey data together, reaching out to our community, seeing who's willing to help and assist, and how we can come up with great ideas. The other one is not worrying less about structure and worrying more about what can we do to make it better. So you don't have to have a list of activities and rules. Invite people to come in and play. Open play is fun. And the last piece is failure. Failure is all right. You're not going to get everything right the first try. Not all the ideas work. So some of the stuff I covered, you might implement, it might not work for you. It's not the end of the world. Not all the gadgets are awesome. Not everyone in the community likes a specific product, and that's okay. Because the idea is we're going to continually refine and adapt our processes and our practices to make it the best space it can be. So if we're pulling all this together, and yes, that's a bunch of cats pulling a wagon. I don't know if that's real or not. I hope it's fake. But pulling it all together. One thing you can do is run a startup weekend, which is a very cool concept where you basically spend 54 hours together pitching business ideas, having mentors, and building a company within basically over a weekend. And so if your library space has computers, has whiteboards, has even a projector, you don't have to go fancy. A projector is fine, and people bring their own laptops. But the idea is that everyone comes to the space and pitches idea and then utilizes the space either in a collaborative fashion or using it as the tools that are provided and building an idea and building a business. The other one is doing a code camp or a hackathon, bringing people together to code, to hack, to play. And hacking is not a negative term by any means. For instance, Facebook will actually give you money if you can hack Facebook. Because then if you find a flaw in Facebook, they'll give you, depending on what it is, a couple $1,000. And so bringing people together, letting them, ethically learn, learning about security or learning how to hack or get involved in things is okay. And so bring people together to code, play, etc. For instance, this uses interactive technology. So basically using cameras and sensors to determine where you're at. So this is Carolina Sabetka in a storefront where a dog will interact with you, a digital dog, and you can fake throw and the dog will disappear and bring back a fake ball. You can pretend you're giving it a treat. It'll bark at you. This is an interactive wall where people come by and those little green squares will rotate and show pictures about campus. And these are all things that are done with open source software that's on the internet. So if you wanted to build an interactive display, and this concept of interactive booths and interactive exhibits is becoming very, very popular. There's a huge demand in it. And so getting on board and getting a bunch of people that are interested in coding and giving the tools to do it and then taking this as your next level is very awesome. In terms of music, art, etc., we already talked about this, but letting our patrons publish their works in the library. Or setting up an Etsy store and doing a fundraiser. So hey, if you make something in our library, allow us to sell it, and we can use those funds we get as a profit that we can then come up with new ideas or buy something. So then if people don't have the ability to donate money, they can donate their skills, and you provide the materials and let hobbyists help you fundraise. At the same time, you can host film festivals, art galleries, Battle of the Band events, and bringing people in. The idea is bringing people in to show what your space can do. Overall, the outcomes are we want to build a safe to fail environment. We want people to feel comfortable to come into our space and fail and experiment, and giving them that opportunity where they're not going to be punished for failure, because you can get punished in school if you don't pass something. The other one is gateway to new ideas. You can spark interest into new fields. So a historian that teaches history every day at his local college could come into your library and play, with circuits and go, wow, I'm really interested in circuits and engineering, and give them that opportunity to come up with something new. The other one is what we do every day, all day, is providing new tools and resources. We're all about access, and we're incredibly good at that. And so by putting our space together in such a way that encourages and continues to drive that type of interaction and sharing of tools is pivotal. And the last piece is my favorite, is what if we launched the next big startup? What if our library came up, gave the tools to our users, and allowed them to incubate their own idea and become the next superstar in the tech industry, for instance? So fast forward 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and your library is up for, hey, we need to get more money in, we got to do a remodel. But this one company basically was able to become bigger than Facebook. Let's ask them for money and see if they'd be willing to assist us. And so it's this really big drive of community that's evident in a makerspace. So there's some websites to watch for other ideas in terms of what to add to your makerspace, how to lay it out for your makerspace. Always a whole bunch of really great ideas. One of my favorites is using Kickstarter, Indiegogo to come up with what's hot and what's upcoming, and then reach out to those people saying, hey, would you be willing to let our library showcase your product? And that's the fancy word of letting me have it for free. And reaching out and having conversations and bringing those experts, bringing the tech in so people can play and interact. In terms of social media, be active. Reach out to other groups, reach out to companies, and then ask if they'd be willing to participate. It doesn't hurt. So that's everything for today. I think we covered quite a wide gambit of stuff. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, well, thank you, Brian, for a lot of good information. We'll let you catch your breath here for a minute. We have a little bit of time, so as Brian said, if anybody's got questions, you can type those into the questions pane, and we'll get through as many as we can. I did just want to make one mention, going back to something Brian said earlier about the importance of networking and connections in this area and sort of sharing inspirations and so forth. There is at least one, well, I'll say two things. Rails does have a Makerspace listserv that we host, and if you go to the Rails website and click on the membership tab, that's where you'll ultimately find our listserv. So if you're interested there, you can certainly sign up for that and be involved in those conversations and sharing. I'll also mention that I am aware of one networking group in the Chicago suburbs, a Makerspace networking group They have a Facebook page, and I believe they meet a couple times a year. That information is also on the Rails website in the membership area under networking. We have a list of networking groups, and that is one group you'll find. So again, another opportunity to connect with folks that are interested in this stuff that Brian was talking today. And I will just lastly say, because a couple questions have rolled in, as Brian said early on, these slides are going to be available. As long as you registered for this webinar and you're here today, you'll get an email follow-up from me or Louise here at Rails with that information for you. So with that, we'll just go into questions. Brian, did you see the one a little earlier asking about the name of the virtual product with the globe on it? So it must have been one of your slides.
I wasn't scrolling. That was my bad.
Oh, no problem.
So the product with the globe on it was called the HoloLens. It's from Microsoft. Essentially what the HoloLens does is it will overlay holographic images. You have to wear this headset to see it. So only you can see it, but it'll map your room out so you can place pictures on the walls, if you will, holographic images in the middle of the floor, and you can walk around it and see 360 degrees of awesome, I guess.
Very cool. And looks like Mike is wondering if you have any suggestions regarding interactive wall software, if there's anything you're aware of.
I have to look up the name of what that company used for it. It was, and I'll find it, Mike. If you want to email me, that way I'll have it as a reminder. Just be like interactive wall software. I can find it and tell you. But it was all open source framework stuff. Essentially, what they had to use was Logitech cameras. You can also make it the same thing accomplished with the Kinect from Microsoft, but they ended up using Logitech cameras and multiple ones because the quality was better and they had a better interactive output, if that makes sense.
Okay. It looks like that. I know you answered some questions during the webinar, so I'll do, yes.
There's one more question, I think. I have a similar question. I've been excited to create a makerspace, but as a solo librarian, it's overwhelming to add another level of supervision to everything myself and other solo librarians are already expected to do, like be 3 places at one time. Any advice for easing the makerspace for being part of the library? For instance, maybe having Maker Fridays and see how it goes and build from there. So that's one way to do it, is just pick a single day and doing a makerspace, or just calling it the Maker Day and bringing in all the stuff and running with it. But at the same time, there'll always be an expert that appears out of your user group that will then own the process. At least I've always seen there's always somebody that's in the group that really gets excited about it, and have them be the point person. And so, and whether that's doing it during their study hall or doing it during or after schools and putting things back together or putting instructions together. And that's probably a win-win for the student because then they get more time to play with stuff they think is awesome, and then it gives them that opportunity to kind of develop their skills in a different fashion. And so I encourage you to just utilize your users. And so there's a library I visited once in Florida that had it was in between elementary and high school students, so they were like just before high school, or so junior high, and they had junior high students coming in and organizing the space, which I thought was like bravo. And so I think that would be one way to help offset. And so then all you got to do, instead of managing an entire space, just give direction to that one individual, and even try it as a trial run. Say, hey, we're going to do this beta or pilot program, and that way you can probably sell it better with your administration.
Okay. And Brian, do you see the question from Marie regarding the HTC Vive, looks like?
Yep. Well, and so let me go to that. You mentioned HTC Vive. I have one in my middle school building, or middle school library purchased by the principal, but we are falling short of figuring out how to use it and implement it. Suggestions. So there are already built like activities you can do with the HTC Vive. So there's like virtual tours of, it was a bombed out building, I believe in England. I think that's a popular one where you can like look around it and click essentially in different buildings and look inside. And that's the quickest and easiest way to show what it can do. And I can help you if you like, if you want to email me. Again, it's feel free. And so the idea is, another concept that people are doing is using the Leap motion controller, which it allows you to mount it to your HTC Vive, or if you're using the room sensors, you can then interact in your space. And so one of the activities that people seem to like is the, what's it called, Google Paint, I believe, where you can then draw in a black space, and using your hand, you can basically draw paintings. And then you can walk around and do like 360-degree views of paint. And that shows the interactive component. And I can give you the links and stuff how to set that up if you need. And then Jessica, feel free to email me about the wall installation and how to put that together. I can get you the links over. Carla, I'm curious if traditional crafts are being addressed at all anymore, knitting, weaving, paper crafts, painting, etc. Actually, they are, and even blending the two together. So there's libraries that still do like knitting clubs, but I've seen some libraries now are actually doing sewable circuits. And so this one girl made a jacket she can wear that she designed herself with like vibrating pads on her shoulders. And the idea was that when she's like walking around and she needs directions, she'll use her app on her phone, and it'll vibrate her shoulders. When it's time to turn right, it'll vibrate her right shoulder. When it's time to turn left, it vibrates her left. And so it kind of encompasses this idea of bringing it together. In terms of paper crafts, Circuit Scribe, check them out. They have a list of like crafts you can do that are with paper, and they're writable circuits. So they have a pen that allows you to draw circuits. Another company you can check out that's very craft-driven is browndoggadgets.com. And they have a whole slew of like craft materials where you're cutting toothbrush heads and mounting motors and sensors to it to make it dance and move, and they're incredibly affordable. And then in terms of painting, yeah, and so then that could be, with your traditional paintbrushes or digital, that people are still doing that, and then showcasing their work, and so doing like art galas, if you will. Amy asked, do you know of any grants to help with funding makerspaces for public libraries? There is, and actually some companies will run their own grant programs for it. So, I'm trying to think. So Avid, A-V-I-D, and I don't know if they still do. They did a couple years ago. Would donate their software and their mixers if you wanted to put together a recording studio. And from what I understand, not many people filled out the grant, so they actually have like untouched money. So first thing, I would reach out to any companies that are doing stuff that you want to buy and say, hey, we want to get your product, but we need to get it through way of a grant. Are you aware of any grants, or do you offer any grant opportunities? And going that route. Or they'll even like, donate stuff.
If I could add, Brian, Rails has right now, we just finished up the first round, but we are going to have another round of grants available that we're calling multi-type collaborative grants. They're very open-ended, but the primary kind of goal in these grants is to get a collaboration between two different types of library in the community. So school, public academic library, special library. We saw several grant applications that were built around makerspaces, or at least had some component of them. So Amy, that is a possibility as well, as long as the grant can be written in a way that would kind of illustrate and foster collaboration between two types of libraries in your community. There could definitely be some funds available for a makerspace, so long as kind of both libraries are benefit from it. So that's on the Rails website as well, if you wanted to check that out.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Someone does a crochet club. I actually was in a knitting club when I was in high school at the library.
Nice. And yeah, I would say my local libraries still have a knitting club that's pretty popular as well. It looks like that is all of our questions, and we are getting close to 11. I will thank Brian once again for a lot of good information, and for all of you for attending and participating in the conversation. Brian has his contact info up on the screen and has made it clear he's welcome to get any follow-up questions from you all today. I will send out those slides soon, and I think with that we will wrap it up.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Everyone have a good day. Bye now.